The restaurant hummed with the soft, steady chaos of lunchtime, the kind that never quite turned loud but never fully settled either. Cutlery chimed against porcelain, chairs scraped the tiled floor, and conversations overlapped in low waves, complaints about work, murmured jokes, the clink of glasses. Warm light spilled through the tall windows, catching dust in the air and turning it briefly golden before it drifted away. Lena moved through it all carefully, as if she were afraid of breaking something fragile and invisible. She had learned to walk that way long ago, quiet steps, eyes lowered, shoulders slightly rounded. Her black apron was always perfectly tied, her hair tucked neatly behind her ears. Most customers barely noticed her beyond the moment she placed their plates on the table. Those who did often assumed she was shy to the point of awkwardness, maybe even slow. Lena never corrected them. Being unnoticed was easier, but what people didn't see was how closely she watched. She noticed hands, lips, the way eyes moved when someone spoke. She noticed pauses that didn't quite fit the rhythm of conversation, smiles that arrived a second too late. While other waitresses memorized orders and table numbers, Lena memorized people. Table 12 was near the window, a quiet spot usually preferred by older guests. When Lena approached it with 2 menus, she sensed something was different even before she reached it. The woman seated there was elderly, her hair silver and carefully styled, her hands folded on the table as if she were waiting for permission to move them. Across from her sat a man in an expensive dark suit, his posture straight, his phone face down beside his plate. Everything about him spoke of control: tailored fabric, polished shoes, a watch that probably cost more than Lena earned in a year. He leaned toward the woman and spoke, his voice calm but deliberately loud. "Mom, do you want the fish or the chicken?" The woman smiled politely, nodding once, but her eyes flicked to his mouth rather than his face. Her nod didn't match the question, it was vague, uncertain, practiced. Lena slowed without realizing it. "I said, the fish or the chicken," the man repeated, louder now, the edges of impatience creeping in. Again, the woman nodded, the same smile fixed in place. Lena's chest tightened. She stepped closer, setting the menus down gently. "Good afternoon," she said softly, more to the woman than the man. The woman didn't look up at the sound of her voice. That was when Lena knew. Her hands lifted before her mind could catch up, moving with a confidence that surprised even her. Her fingers shaped words in the air, clear, gentle, respectful. "Hello. Welcome. How are you today?" The elderly woman's head snapped up. Her eyes widened, then filled, as if someone had suddenly turned on a light in a dark room. She stared at Lena's hands, then at her face, then back at her hands again, breath catching. Slowly, hesitantly, she raised her own hands. "I am surprised," the woman signed, her movements careful, slightly stiff from disuse. Lena smiled, relief blooming in her chest. She answered fluidly, warmth flowing into every gesture. "I'm happy to meet you. My name is Lena." The woman's smile broke wide and real, lines deepening around her eyes. She signed faster now, emotion loosening her fingers. "I haven't spoken like this in so long. No one here knows my language." Across the table, the man had gone completely still. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice suddenly quieter. Lena froze mid-motion. The weight of the moment crashed down on her all at once, the restaurant, the rules, her job. Heat rushed to her face. She lowered her hands quickly and turned to him. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, words tumbling over each other. "I didn't mean to interrupt. Your mother is deaf. I was just. You're signing," he said slowly, as if testing the words. "Yes. I learned when I was younger." His gaze flicked back to his mother. The woman was looking at Lena with an expression he hadn't seen in years, open, alive, almost childlike in its joy. She reached out suddenly and caught Lena's wrist, holding it gently but firmly, signing urgently. "Don't stop, please." Lena hesitated, then looked to the man for permission. He nodded without fully realizing he'd done it. She turned back to the woman and resumed signing. "Would you like something to drink?" The woman laughed silently, shoulders shaking, tears spilling down her cheeks. She nodded, signing back with quick, grateful movements. "Anything. I don't even care. I just want to keep talking." The man's throat tightened. He watched the exchange, the easy rhythm between them, the way his mother's entire body seemed to change. She sat straighter now, her hands animated, her face glowing with expression he'd forgotten she still had. "I didn't know," he murmured. "No one told me she'd feel this way." Lena translated gently, her hands slower now, careful with every word. "She says she's happy. She says she didn't expect this today." The man exhaled, a shaky sound he didn't bother to hide. Around them, the restaurant noise seemed to fade, as if the space itself was leaning in. A couple at a nearby table had gone quiet, watching with soft expressions. Even the clatter from the kitchen felt distant. "How long have you known sign language?" he asked Lena. "Since I was 10, she replied. "My neighbor was deaf. She taught me. It stayed with me." His mother squeezed Lena's hand again, signing slowly now, deliberately. "You have kind hands. You make me feel seen." Lena swallowed hard, blinking back sudden tears. She signed back carefully, heart pounding. "You are seen." The man looked from Lena to his mother and back again, his composed exterior cracking. For the first time in years, he felt like an outsider at his own table, watching someone else give his mother something he hadn't known how to provide. And as Lena stood there, caught between her fear of overstepping and the undeniable pull of human connection, she had no idea that this small, instinctive act, this quiet movement of her hands, had already changed the course of all their lives. The quiet that followed at table 12 was unlike anything Lena had ever experienced in a restaurant. The usual background clamor, the soft scraping of chairs, the faint hum of conversation, the occasional clink of cutlery, seemed to dim around them, as though the room itself was giving space for something fragile and precious to unfold. Lena perched carefully on the edge of a chair opposite the elderly woman, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her fingers still trembling slightly from the intensity of what had just happened. She felt almost like an intruder, witnessing something deeply personal, but the mother's gentle, encouraging gaze kept her rooted in place. The billionaire, whose name Lena now knew was Alexander, had finally sat down across from them. He seemed smaller somehow, his usual commanding presence softened by an unfamiliar vulnerability. His eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, were red-rimmed, and he avoided meeting Lena's gaze directly, as if afraid that doing so might expose a part of himself he rarely showed. He glanced at his mother, who was still signing rapidly, then back at Lena, trying to absorb the enormity of the moment. "She says she's tired of people talking at her instead of to her," Lena translated carefully, her hands moving slowly so everyone could follow. "She says she feels invisible most days. Like she's just background noise." Alexander's jaw tightened, his fingers drumming lightly against the table as he struggled to control the sudden wave of emotion. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling audibly, his gaze falling on his mother in a way he hadn't done for years. She looked back at him with soft, patient eyes, as though understanding his inner turmoil without words. Lena signed the woman's words to him once more, gently, so he could fully grasp them. I didn't realize," he said quietly, almost to himself. I thought providing for her, keeping her comfortable, was enough. Money, security, I never thought about whether she felt heard. Seen." He ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time that Lena could recall, he looked truly human, not the untouchable billionaire, not the man in control, but a son confronting the consequences of neglect he hadn't realized he was capable of. His mother reached out and touched his hand, signing slowly, clearly, correcting his awkward movements as he tried to respond. Lena watched, her heart swelling, as the years between them seemed to collapse in that small, sunlit corner of the restaurant. "She says you gave her a voice today," Lena translated, her own voice catching slightly. "She says you reminded her she still matters." Alexander blinked, as if the words themselves were too heavy to fully register. Then, without warning, his composure shattered entirely. He leaned forward, catching his mother's hands in both of his, signing slowly but deliberately now, each gesture careful, deliberate, filled with emotion that had been locked away for too long. I promise I won't let you feel alone again," he signed, voice breaking even as his fingers moved. I'll be here. I'll listen. I'll be present." His mother's tears fell freely now, a mixture of joy, relief, and long-held longing. She laughed softly through them, correcting his hand shapes affectionately, chiding him in a way only a mother could. The warmth and love radiating from them made the surrounding air feel almost tangible, like something heavy had lifted from the room and allowed sunlight to flood in. Lena, though a stranger in their story, felt herself swept into the current of intimacy, as though she were part of the healing itself. Alexander turned then, suddenly aware of Lena sitting quietly, still trembling slightly, still trying to find her place in this moment that was so much bigger than herself. His eyes met hers, steady now, full of gratitude and something else, something she couldn't quite name, but it made her heart thump in her chest. "And you," he said, his voice raw, breaking through the soft din of the restaurant, "if you ever want more than carrying trays, I want to help you carry your future." Lena blinked, stunned. She had expected thanks, perhaps a polite nod, maybe a tip for her service. She had never imagined an offer that could alter the course of her life. Her hands went to her chest instinctively, her fingers trembling as she tried to process what he had just said. The mother reached for her hand, squeezing it gently, signing one simple word, "Thank you." Lena mirrored the gesture, signing back in kind, "Thank you." It was a brief exchange, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 words, of gratitude, of respect, of recognition. Around them, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Other diners glanced over, sensing something extraordinary had happened. The kitchen staff paused mid-motion, noticing the rare stillness, the invisible energy that had woven itself around that single table. Even the sunlight spilling through the windows seemed brighter, more golden, more alive, as if it were honoring the moment. Alexander stood suddenly, a strange mixture of urgency and reverence in his movements. He pulled his mother into a firm, protective embrace, holding her as if he could shield her from every year of neglect, every lonely day. Her hands rested against his chest, signing slowly and clearly now, words of love and forgiveness flowing between them like a river long dammed. Lena watched quietly, the tears she had been holding back spilling freely now. She felt a warmth in her chest, an unspoken acknowledgement that she had been part of something rare and profound. She had been the bridge between two hearts, the unexpected conduit of connection that had allowed a mother and son to find each other again. Alexander finally pulled back, his eyes meeting hers again. You didn't just serve us food," he said, voice breaking with emotion. "You gave her dignity. You gave her a piece of herself she thought she'd lost." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card, sliding it across the table toward her. She picked it up, fingers trembling, and read the name and number written neatly across the front. "For anything you ever need," he said. "Education, opportunities, anything. I want you to have choices." Lena's lips trembled, but no words came. Her hands moved instead, signing slowly, carefully, I don't know what to say." The mother laughed softly, her eyes twinkling, and signed back, "You don't have to say anything. You already did enough." Alexander looked at her then, a smile breaking across his face for the first time that day. "And I want you to stay in our lives. Not just as our waitress. As our friend. As family, if you'll let us." Lena felt the weight of the moment press down on her, and then lift again in a single, surreal heartbeat. Her chest ached, her eyes burned, but she felt lighter than she had in years. She nodded, signing her acceptance carefully, slowly, savoring each movement. "Yes," she signed, "I'll stay." The mother's laughter rang out again, full and unrestrained, filling the restaurant with joy. Alexander looked at them both, tears streaming silently down his cheeks, and finally allowed himself to relax, to let the moment settle into his bones. Around them, the room returned to its usual rhythm, but the air at table 12 remained different. It was lighter, warmer, charged with a quiet joy that couldn't be measured in sound alone. Strangers at nearby tables watched, some wiping away tears, some smiling knowingly, sensing that they had witnessed something extraordinary. And in that corner of the restaurant, between plates of unfinished food and soft sunlight, a shy waitress had transformed the lives of two people who had once felt lost in silence. She had reminded a mother that she mattered. She had reminded a son what it meant to truly listen. And in the process, she had quietly rewritten her own future, one gentle hand sign at a time. By the time Lena left table 12, the restaurant was returning to normal. Conversations resumed, chairs scraped the floor, cutlery clinked against plates, but the memory of that moment lingered in the air, invisible yet unmistakable. Alexander and his mother waved to her as she walked away, their smiles radiant, their hearts lighter, and Lena felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. She realized that sometimes, even the smallest acts, a word, a gesture, a silent understanding, could ripple out to touch lives in ways that money, power, or position never could. And she knew, deep in her heart, that her life had changed forever.